Hey guys, how's it going? Kripp here. Today I want to give you guys the last of my Witchwood card reviews. Now, typically what I do once all the cards have been revealed, I go back and I re-review all of the cards and I give you guys my opinion of how good they are in all the different game modes and all that. But honestly, everyone, even people that barely play Hearthstone, are doing card reviews. So you're probably a bit exhausted of card reviews, and I thought I would skip the Kripp on all the crappy, mediocre, and cards that are likely not going to see too much play, even though they could, and just give you guys the cream of the crop. Today I'm going to review what I think the two best cards of every class and out of the neutrals are, so you have some idea what I think the game is moving towards. So let's get started here. For Druid actually didn't get very many good cards at all. I struggled to even find two good cards. I think the best new Druid card is Whispering Woods, where you can flood the board with a bunch of 1/1s, and as a result you have to keep your hand size fairly high. I don't think that'll be that difficult. I think that deck seems pretty decent, and this is probably going to be one of the core cards, one of the reasons why you would play that deck. It's 4 mana, 7/7 across 7 bodies, and Druids really like to buff all the stuff that they play, so it's actually quite strong. I think that's the best Druid card. The second best, I think it's Witching Hour, but I'm not sure. Honestly, I think all of the other revealed Druid cards have their issues. Witching Hour certainly has its consistency issue. What beast would you play and all that kind of stuff, but it's 3 mana to summon a random friendly beast that died this game, so you can certainly do some work there by just playing your own typical version of whatever Druid deck you want, including like 3 to 4 very powerful beasts. You don't even have to go crazy. You can just put in like a Druid of the Claw and Taunt form, and Witching Hour is just an insanely high tempo power play. And that's typically what's missing in Druid. So it's definitely a very strong card. I just still have some doubts of the likelihood of it seeing any play, even though it's quite strong. For Hunter, I think the best Hunter card is Houndmaster Shah. I know this has received some criticism, but come on, give me a break. This card is crazy. This card is bonkerino, guys. It's a 4 mana 3/6. It's like we just always just forget how much stats matter when you're playing aggro or mid-range, which is basically all that Hunter has done in the past 5 years of Hearthstone, right? So Houndmaster Shah is premium stats. 4 mana 3/6 is nuts. Now, the other aspect is Hunter does not have very much in the way of 4 mana power plays. You're looking at just Houndmaster, and a lot of the time, you don't have a beast left over from the previous turn. Houndmaster Shah is an unconditional card. You just play it on turn 4. If you have no other minions to rush, you just play it on turn 4, and it's really good. If you have other minions with death rattles that you can rush immediately, well, you're probably going to stomp your opponent. Yeah. It's really good in that sense. So it's just an overall extremely high power level card that seems to work with what Hunter has done in the past, so it's just so good. Then, probably a controversial one, I think the second best Hunter card is Rat Trap. It took me for the reveal stream that they did the other night to see the condition here. Your opponent playing 3 cards in 1 turn. I thought that was not very likely, but I was seeing the new decks, the new cards, and honestly, even the slow decks were playing 3 cards every turn. Not every turn, but a decent number of turns. To where, yeah, they could play around it, but if you're playing a 2 mana card to push your opponent into constant suboptimal plays the entire game, that's also pretty good. And the other aspect here is that, well, you can just play this in a slower Hunter deck with removal. If your opponent can't play very many cards in any turn, single target hard removal is a lot better than it would otherwise be. So that's also very good because Hunter happens to have a lot of very efficient large-scale removal. So Rat Trap is just really good. For Mage, I believe the best card hands down is Book of Specters. 2 mana, draw 3, or maybe draw 2, or even draw 1 is crazy. This card is so good, I think it's going to see play in just about every single Mage deck, including those that have mostly spells. I think discarding some spells is not that big of a deal when the effect is that strong, unless of course you're trying to run a combo and a large number of the combo pieces are spells. Then you wouldn't play this card, but in basically every other mage deck, you would play this card. The second best mage card in my opinion is Vexcrow. I know I'm probably going to get some crap for this, but I think this card is really good. It's just absurd in Arena, and it synergizes off of spells. Now I know Mage has a pretty big push for minion-based decks this time around, but nonetheless, I think there's still going to be a lot of spells being played, and Vexcrow is just so solid. If you play Vexcrow and just a spell, you're getting a 3/3 for 4 mana and about 1.5 mana worth of stats for a random 2-drop. Because a random 2-drop is not the same as a 2-drop that you'd normally put into your deck. It's not, so let's not pretend that it is. But that's still really good because you're getting good value. If you play this and like a 2-cost spell, that's a powerful play. And Vexcrow is still on the board, so it threatens you pushing for further combo and further value on follow-up turns. That's just really good. Mage will have a difficult time finding a new identity for a deck because it's losing a lot of the base of its Tempo Mage core, so I think some people should look towards decks that use Vexcrow and see where that ends up, and I think it'll end up in a pretty good spot. Then we have Paladin. Paladin is receiving a large number of powerful cards. I think almost every new Paladin card is really good, but Paladin has same issues as Warlock will, where the existing card pool is just so insanely powerful and dominant in the meta. There's really very small windows of opportunity for the new cards, even as powerful as they may be, to actually fit in those decks. So that's why I'm going to rank the following 2 Paladin cards, number 1 and number 2. Not necessarily because they're the most powerful Paladin cards. I think standalone, some others might be more powerful in general. It's just that these are the only 2 cards that I feel could be played in the existing Paladin deck types. Number 1 is Bellringer Sentry. It's a 4-mana 3/4 that digs up a secret immediately. That's kind of like playing a 3-mana 3/4 plus a secret, and secrets are very mana efficient for Paladin. It's just that you don't want to draw them because they're very low impact for a card cost. But if you're pulling it directly from your deck, it's very strong. If you're doing it twice, that's very, very strong. So this is just a very strong card. And it goes well with what Paladin traditionally does. Efficient stuff, get rid of cards from your hand, get value, get tempo. That's it. This is the card. It works so well in almost every fast type of Paladin deck. Then I ranked Hidden Wisdom for the same reasons. I put in Rat Trap as the second best Hunter card. Hidden Wisdom, I believe, is the second best Paladin card. I think your opponent playing 3 cards in 1 turn is quite likely, so this is 1 mana, draw 2 cards later, but you don't always need to draw. So drawing 2 cards later is just fine, especially if you're trying to push for like a Divine Favor play. You can put this on the board, then Divine Favor. Then your opponent starts panicking, maybe you play 3 cards, then you draw more cards. It's just a really powerful secret. I don't know if you'd play 2 of these, but you'd certainly want to play 1 of these in a lot of the existing Paladin decks. As for Priest, I had some, let me say, dilemmas. I think one of the most powerful Priest cards is the Death Rattle minion that when it dies, it puts another Death Rattle minion from your hand into play. But when I looked at what Death Rattle minions you can actually play right now, that list is just so short. Some of the Priest cards that are being released do not have the support cards they require to achieve their full potential. So as such, the ones that are left, I rank Chameleos number 1. I think Chameleos is a really bad card against aggro decks, but against control decks, largely the information it gives, not so much the value. Yes, you might get a Death Knight from time to time, but you're not really playing it for that. Just to know what you're up against, knowing that your opponent has like an 8/8 minion, and on the board you're facing a 5/5 and you're holding on to a death. Just knowing that is so powerful. That's why I think Chameleos is probably about as good as it gets. Even though I was one of the first people to say how bad this card can be against aggro, I think its incredible power level against other control decks is going to average out to a really powerful card. Second best on the Priest list for me is Holy Water. And again, I'm sure some of you guys are going to criticize me for this one, but I don't care. I think Holy Water is a great card. I think it's incredibly powerful against control because you're getting removal plus value, plus you can choose the value, plus you can choose the removal when you need it. Because Priest already has quite a lot of removal as well, so you can be patient against the control deck. And against an aggro deck, it's still decent. It's not great, but it's still decent. The flexibility of the card is outstanding. Value removal is certainly very difficult to come by for Priest unless you're talking about mind control, and mind control is just far too polarizing in the aggro versus control meta spectrum. So Holy Water, pretty good. For Rogue is an interesting one. I think the best Rogue card is Blink Fox. If you just look at all the Rogue cards, Blink Fox is a card that could cost 1 more mana and still be pretty good. So if it was a 4 mana 3/3 with basically draw from your opponent's class, that's pretty decent still. But it's a 3 mana 3/3. This card's really just very strong. You can play this in just about any Rogue deck, and you're going to be pretty happy that you put it in. You don't even have to go crazy with the playing cards of opponent's class deck type that they seem to be pushing a little bit. You can just play this, and it's a strong value card. Second best Rogue card, I think, is the Cutthroat Buccaneer. This might come as a surprise, but if you really look back at what Rogue has right now, Rogue has some powerful weapon-based decks, but most of the weapon buffing effects are cycling out. So even though Cutthroat Buccaneer, it doesn't look impressive compared to what we've seen Rogue do in the past, it looks kind of on par with similar, weapon buffing cards, maybe even below par. But Rogue is not going to have weapon buffing cards shortly enough. So this is just going to be a necessary card in any Rogue deck that uses weapons, and that's probably going to be a decent number of them. So it's just going to end up being pretty useful. And then for Shaman, I have, honestly, just the 2 legendaries. The first legendary, Shudderwalk. I thought at face value the card is alright, but then in the reveal stream, they showed just the insane combos that you could pull off using Serenite Chain Gang to duplicate itself, other cards to give you infinite value, putting it back into your deck after you play it. It's a all-in-one win condition, infinite value, crazy legendary card. Yeah, it's crazy. Then the other one is the new Shaman Death Knight card, Hagatha the Witch. I think this card is just good enough to see play in almost every Shaman deck that isn't aggro, and a lot of the Shaman cards that have come into play recently are not aggro, so I think it's going to be a fairly widely used card. For Warlock, again, Warlock gets a lot of powerful cards, but the current Warlock decks are so strong, and they're not losing very many cards when the standard rotation cycles out. So really the 2 Warlock cards I picked are the 2 that might have a chance of making it in current decks. The first one is Lord Godfrey. I think it doesn't work particularly well with Cube Lock. It's very good in Control Lock, but Control Lock doesn't have too many card slots open in its deck. So it's very crowded in those Warlock decks, but Lord Godfrey as a standalone card I think is the single best card in the entire expansion, so it'll probably just end up seeing some play anyway. It's a full removal. It's going to go through Death Rattle minions that spawn more minions. It's just totally insane. I would play this over Twisting Nether. I think this card would be broken at 8 mana, and it costs 7. It does not kill itself. You get the body at the end. The 2 damages to all other minions. It's just totally insane. This card is totally insane. Then my second pick is Ratcatcher. I think Ratcatcher could actually see some play in existing Cube Lock lists. It could actually see some play in Control Warlock lists. I know a lot of the time to play around Silence or to play around like Mind Control-like effects, I would just really want to kill my minions whether or not I want it to gain life. And Ratcatcher definitely lets you do that. It lets you kill off a minion on your own turn and not be too sad about it. That's one aspect. The other aspect is it's just a very high value comeback card. So if you're behind on the board against 2 mid-sized or large minions, maybe you can value trade 1. Ratcatcher, you're like remaining 6/1 of a minion, and then for 3 mana, you're doing like 8 damage to another minion if you need to. So it's a very good comeback card, and actually comeback cards are pretty valuable in general. So Ratcatcher, I think, is very strong, even though I think it hasn't received too much attention, and an honorable mention for the minus attack card that I think is a bit too clunky for now, but we'll see later on. Town Crier, best warrior card. There's not much that needs to be said. If you look at a 1-drop card and it looks good to you, it's probably going to break the game. And this card is that. It's probably going to break the game at some point. Second best warrior card, I think, is the Woodcutter's Axe. I think standalone, it is a pretty good weapon. 2 mana, 2/2 is pretty good, honestly. That's solid. Aggressive decks like Paladins, they've used Argent Lance before, which is often enough this without the effect. And if you're playing a fast warrior deck, you might not run too many rush minions, but you're going to play the best warrior card, Town Crier, so you're going to play some rush minions. And if you can get this effect on any rush minion, this weapon is absolutely absurd. So Woodcutter's Axe, pretty good. Then for neutrals, I do want to mention that in this expansion, more so than any other, the neutral cards are god-awful. I really struggle to find a second best neutral card. I think the best neutral card is Dorian. Dorian is just nuts. If you're playing it in an aggressive deck, the 6 health is going to protect it sufficiently to where you're going to get constant value. If you play this and just draw any one card, it's insanely good. It'd be 5 mana for a 2/6 and a 1/1 with a likely effect, with the fact that it's threatening to do much, much more than that. So Dorian is just an extremely high power level card that fits into aggressive decks and mid-range decks, and trust me, there's going to be some of those. The second best card, even though there's a few neutral cards that we have a pretty good feeling are going to fit into some different type of decks, there's very few that are going to fit in more than one deck, and as a result, I kind of cave in and went with Countess Ashmore. I don't think this card is very good. I think it's probably about as good as Curator. I think Curator is much better because it's a taunt minion, despite the lower attack power, but I think Countess is a little bit better because the conditions on the card are a little bit better than Curators, so you don't have to search for a Murloc. You can actually play 3 pretty good cards that it would draw. I think Countess mostly fits into aggressive decks that lack card draw. There's not a lot of those. Most decks that are aggressive are good because they don't lack card draw. And similarly for maybe aggressive mid-range style decks where you'd actually make use of the 6 attack. You'd play this in a deck where you want this as an attacker, not a defender. Unlike Curator, I think this is an aggressive card draw card, not a defensive one. And I think when you take a look at it in that regard, it's all right. I wouldn't go crazy for it, but if you pull it from your packs, I would not disenchant it either. So that's it. Those are my picks for the best cards of the expansion. And let me know what you guys think, whether or not you agree, whether or not you have other mentions, and well, good luck in pulling some of these, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for watching the video. There's a lot more content. A lot more content this Thursday, specifically. Expansions being released. Don't know exactly when, but I will be streaming on Twitch, links below, starting at 11 a.m. EST. That's 12 hours earlier than my regular stream. I'll be streaming all day. We're not going to miss the launch of the new expansion, and I'm going to keep you guys busy with some really cool stuff until that happens. So come in and check it out.